You're listening to the _Transformation podcast, your practical guide to business transformation.
Welcome to the _Transformation podcast. My name's Joe Ailes.
I'm Jason West.
And today we are talking about business change. So change is by its nature uncomfortable. Our initial reaction to hearing about major change is rarely a wholly positive one.
Yes.
Even if the change is conspicuously positive to us, we need time to process, work out what it actually means to me, discover more about the change, then reach an emotional accommodation with what's about to happen to us. The more time and resource we can dedicate to helping people through this change process, the more likely the change will stick. And interestingly, the consistent feedback that we hear from business leaders, even if they look back on successful transformation programs, is that they wish they'd spent more time and budget on managing the people elements of change. So now that your budget's been approved, you're raring to go, Jason, what's the first thing you should do or consider when it comes to managing change?
I think the first thing that you want to do is go out and hire a change manager and do this now. Do it right now at the start of the project. Don't wait just before you're about to go live. Hire this person now. We typically recommend that you do hire this individual externally. So bring in a contractor or a consultant or somebody with a wealth of experience, because they can bring tools and expertise and knowledge about other organizations and multiple change programs about what worked. Now, for some organizations, they have in-house change management offices with these types of people in them, which is great. If you have them, by all means, definitely use them. Even if they do exist in your organization, they can be really quite constrained because everybody wants a piece of them. So there's a reasonable chance that you're going to have to go external for this. One thing we wouldn't recommend is resourcing this role internally with an enthusiastic amateur. This is so important to your overall success. This isn't just implementing a new piece of technology or a change to a process. This is transforming your whole function. People change is going to be central to the success. So even for the smaller organizations, if your budget can't quite stretch to a full-time change manager, make sure that your program manager or some other member of the program team has deep expertise. If one of these team members has change management experience, it's really critical that they've got the capacity to be able to do the job they need to do around the change elements of the program. So from a program sponsor's perspective, you've really got to satisfy yourself that the program team has got the skills, the experience, but the capacity as well to manage the people change. If there are any doubts as a sponsor that you've got capacity or capability constraints within your program team around change management, you really need to address this as soon as humanly possible. So let's say you've got your change manager on board. The first thing they need to be doing is working really closely with the project managers that are managing or planning out the detailed changes that are going to happen around operating model, around process, around technology. And they need to put change management plans in place in parallel with those project managers. So that close collaboration between change and project is essential. At the program level, you're really looking for those kind of key moments where your program is going to touch various stakeholder groups. And you need to be mindful about how are they going to be engaged. Change management plans at the project level, but also at the overarching program level. And when we think about those kind of main touch points in a program, it would be the kickoff meeting. It could be multiple kickoff meetings, and we'll talk about that. Design workshops, any sort of technology, prototype reviews, those sorts of sessions, operational steering committee meetings, change agent network meetings, user acceptance testing, model office simulations, consultation. If you're making changes to the operating model, well, there's consultation to consider. Now, obviously, there's further touch points as we get into transition and that whole piece around operational readiness and training and all that sort of stuff. But we're going to cover that in a future checklist. So for each of these touch points, there's some really important considerations. We'll just focus on kickoff now. I think that's a pretty good one, and it's one of the most important ones in actual fact when it comes to the build phase, because it kind of sets the tone and the level of priority that people are going to place on this program. So we'll use this as an example, but you can apply the thinking to any point that your program's going to touch a stakeholder group, and you need to think about how you're going to engage them at each stage. So the first consideration is, what's the outcome? What are you trying to achieve here? What's the outcome that we're seeking to achieve from engaging this group of people or this individual? For a kickoff meeting, the first thing is to inform people. They need to be aware that a change is coming, and they need to understand, well, why. They also have got to understand, well, what's the relative strategic priority of this program over the other 4 that are happening, over my day job and over my boss's, pet project. So having that clarity is really key. They also need to know what's going to happen, so what to expect, and most importantly, I think, is what can I do as an individual to affect the outcome. Your aim should be for the majority of people to feel like the change needs to happen and that they can influence the outcome. The worst thing that you can do is to instill a belief in people that all the major decisions have already been made. If you do, you're in for a really bumpy ride. At best, you're going to end up with demoralized teams who are going to be less effective in their day jobs. At worst, you're going to have people that are going to react negatively and find lots of inventive ways of resisting the change that you're trying to put in. So getting the right balance of telling people about what's going to happen, but also listening and receiving information back in is really key, and we'll get onto that in a bit. The second consideration is really about who should attend.
Hopefully you'd have engaged the organisation and a broad set of stakeholders in scoping out the change.
Yes.
If you haven't, this is the perfect opportunity to engage the organisation as broadly as possible. We have noticed, however, in some cases, there's a bit of reluctance from some of the sponsors on engaging the business too widely, because a fear, I guess, of setting expectations that change is about to happen, and more a willingness to follow a program plan or a change plan that communicates the outcome of what you're trying to change just before you go live.
Yes,
Change isn't change. Change is just a comms channel. If you do that, you're bound to your program is not going to be successful. You're not going to change the hearts and minds of individuals to do things in a different way, and the organisation will feel that change has been imposed on them, to your point.
Yeah.
So this is vitally important that these kickoff meetings happen. And it's really important that the kickoff meetings happen with a really broad set of stakeholders. So individuals across the organization that have got strong opinions on how things should be done in the future, who've got a strong point of view. People that actually might be resistant to change, involve them at this stage, maybe help turn them around. Have your suppliers involved in these conversations. Any critical stakeholders, have them involved in these conversations. Have your functions, your finance, your operations, your business representatives, even your sales team if you're doing transformation, your procurement team, those involved in a supply chain, people that are going to be impacted by your change. Involve them in your kickoff. To your point, and describe the change and create a call to arms, really. This is an opportunity for people to get engaged with the program, and then make sure that your program structure includes these relevant stakeholders in the various sort of work streams, and use the change management work stream led by this change manager to sort of help guide through the comms and the engagement activities with these various stakeholders, and keep them warm throughout.
Yeah.
And this is not a one-off exercise, is it? Really?
No, absolutely.
It's not a one-off engagement exercise. It's a continuous engagement piece.
And this is where your plan needs to come in.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's got to be interwoven with the project plans.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really important is invite everyone from your function. If you're transforming finance, get everybody in finance there. As far as you possibly can, everybody together in one room. Now, for global organizations and, functions that are larger than 200 odd people, that can be a real challenge. But as far as humanly possible, you want people in the same place, hearing the same message, and then you want them doing stuff together. You want to get them working on the problem. Now, that's not always possible. So you got to work with the constraints that you have. But if you are running multiple kickoff sessions, then it's just worth considering how you go about doing that. Depending on the sensitivity of the message and the culture of the business, it might be fine to have a big kickoff. And then, video conferencing video conferencing facilities, or, putting stuff out on the intranet. But that does tend to lead to a bit of a them and us, where the people in the core country get one set of messages and one experience, and everyone else gets a kind of second rate. So either kind of country by country kickoffs, which we've done previously, and in which case, you've got to think about who delivers which message in that scenario, or you have a core kickoff country, but you put project team members out in the other country so you can run the engagement and the workshop sessions that are vital to an effective kickoff, and we'll come on and say a bit more about that.
You're listening to the _Transformation podcast. This podcast is brought to you by _, the transformation capability specialists. To find out more, visit _-group.com.
So that's kind of the attendees. Then there's the people on stage, if you like. So you've got to think really carefully about who's best at delivering which message. And you've got a number of different messages that need to be delivered. So anything that's around the overall business context, the case for change, what needs to change, planned activities, and how people can get involved. They're actually slightly different messages, and you kind of need different people delivering them. So wherever possible, when you're setting business context, get the CEO and get them on, to stand up on stage.
If it's important to the CEO, it will be important to the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you can't physically get them there to do that business context and their strategic perspective, then a pre-recorded video is kind of, good. It's better than not. But, ideally you do want that demonstration of executive sponsorship in the room. When it comes to those kind of regional kickoffs, having regional general managers or country CEOs doing their bit as well, that shows that kind of real local buy-in, which kind of global projects or programs can often suffer from corporate head office says, I'm here to help.
Yeah, tower, absolutely.
Yeah, having those local leaders involved, maybe get the CEO message, and then it's the local country leadership team putting their unique perspective on it. That really does help show, really well-aligned sponsorship. Anything that's about the why this is happening and what's about to happen, it needs to be the leader of that function. So if it's finance, if it's the CFO, it's HR, it's the CHRO, or whatever the job title is. So the key thing there is that it's really demonstrating the importance of this change to them as an individual and what they're going to do about it. the detail around the plan about what's going to happen and that kind of approach piece could be your transformation leader that we talked about, that permanent senior person that's on your team accountable, program manager, program director that you might bring in from outside. They should probably be involved in delivering that. But the key thing here is really just think about who best delivers those messages. The final consideration really for any type of engagement that you have with groups of stakeholders is making a decision about, is this a transmit one way, you just need to be informed, or have we got an opportunity to seek genuine engagement, so two-way conversation. So you've got a large number of people sat in a big hall somewhere. That's an incredibly costly exercise. So just talking at them for half a day and showing them some PowerPoint is not a good use of everybody's time. You really do want to get input. So really thinking through and planning a series of working sessions with different people, different groups, getting them to provide their input and feedback is really key. And it can massively help your program to tap into all that tacit knowledge that people have. And it also makes them feel like they can influence what's going to happen and genuinely influence what's about to happen to them.
Yeah. We've run exercises in the past where we've helped the entire functions refined the vision of the functional leader in a finance transformation program.
Yes, and breakout sessions on of particular sub-functional areas of finance or HR. Whether it's resourcing or it's procure to pay or whatever it is. That's actually get teams of people engaged and ask them, well, what's working well today? What's not working so well? Or do that kind of stop, start, continue. These type of, trodden, proven, simple working sessions, but, document it. Get business analysts to write this down and pull them into the requirements for consideration. Because
actually some of those individuals will describe pain points in a downstream systems and ways of working that people might not necessarily recognize. And actually the program's a good vehicle to address some of those pain points. So why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Get people to describe what world class looks like. Get their vision and you're getting this kind of buy-in to a vision of world class, and then really decide and get them to say, okay, well, where are we today, and perhaps where should we aim to be? Because not everything needs to be world class, and it's good to see the kind of the group's ambition and how well that aligns with the sponsor's vision on where things need to be in these different areas. And other things are around culture. Doing workshops on our culture today and what should our culture be tomorrow. Identifying challenges. What are the risks that we might expect to see as we're delivering the program, or you just sometimes you just need information. If you're kicking off a program, there's a whole load of information that you need, and who do we need to go through to for this data? What systems are we using to report out of? Are there individual stakeholder groups that we need to be particularly mindful of? Those sorts of things are really meaningful information from use the wisdom of the crowd. Another thing that we've done several times is around behaviours. So kind of contracting at a very broad level for, these are the program behaviours that we're going to have and my personal commitments as an individual, and get people to sign up to it. And final bits are really, outcomes. What are the outcomes that we expect in learning and development? What would the business benefits be? And this is where, and throughout all of this, having a business representation in each of these working sessions is key, and finding ways of tracking what the business thinks versus what the function thinks. That's really useful information as you get into the design phase. And then there's the good old-fashioned question and answer. So lots and lots and lots of ways to engage people at these kickoff sessions. So wherever possible, you're really looking for that opportunity for that two-way conversation, because realistically, it will affect the design of the solution if you really understand what people want and need.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it should.
Because ultimately, you do not want to run transformation programs every 2 to 3 years to address business issues and operational issues, etc. So this is a perfect channel, the perfect vehicle to address an awful lot of pain across any organization. So use the wisdom of the crowd to get their insights.
Yeah, so given the complex nature of transformation, your ability to digest information that's coming out of a broad, stakeholder group, analyze it, make changes, adapt, shift course is really key, because it is a bit of a process of discovery, and you need to have that flexibility and that agility to make changes as you go, but as and when you do, it's really important to have a good level of discipline around your documentation and tracking where your requirements have changed and design decisions have changed. It's all too easy if you don't track these changes to end up in a bit of a circular design loop. So that's the downside of this two-way engagement, is that you engage, you find out new information, you adapt, you change, and then you find another piece of new information. And if you haven't really fully understood why you changed, then you could just keep changing and you find new information and you end up in a bit of a circular pattern. So be mindful of that, but absolutely go out there and engage. So if you find yourself, though, midway through implementation, you've not done any of these things, if you've just been broadcasting and you've not sought any engagement and you haven't worked through that, what's the outcome? Who are the people we're talking to? What do we want them to walk away with? Who's the right people to address the messages? All those sorts of things. Well, you know what? It's not too late. Start doing it now if you're not doing it already, because it's really never too late to start managing the people elements of change, unless it's just before you go live, in which case it really is too late.
It is, yeah. You got to live with the consequences of resistance in operations.
Yeah, absolutely. The change will happen. It's just whether it's controlled or not, and whether the outcome is what you really expect it to be.
It won't be a pleasant experience for the sponsor.
No, absolutely.
Post go live. Yeah. I mean, change is. We what's interesting is we've touched on a topic, and is a really vital topic for the successful deployment of any change, of any transformation, which is that hosting that kickoff, getting the hearts and minds of individuals engaged right up front. But actually, change management as a whole is so broad, and we've only touched on one element of it. The change manager and the change management role. It'll be much broader than that.
Oh, yes.
There's all the hearts and minds, finding out who the key stakeholders are, who the key influencers are, how do you engage the organization formally, using formal channels and formal structure, and then there's all of the activity that needs to happen informally. So what are those conversations that need to happen in corridors? Who are those individuals that are resisting any form of change? So there's an awful lot of activity and thought that needs to go into a change plan that has both, as all of these activities, but also has the subtleties of the dark arts of change management that needs to happen.
Yes.
And these are sets of skills and capabilities that individuals that have got professional change management qualifications and accreditations have.
Yes.
So to your point at the very beginning, do not give this task to an enthusiastic individual full of energy. Absolutely, they need to have that, but they also need to come equipped with the skills and capability to drive change techniques through the organization.
Absolutely.
So great. So now we've talked about the kickoff. We've got a whole load of input, and pain points across the organization into a set of requirements and well documented, it's only natural that we now start thinking about design. So our next week's episode will be focusing on solution design. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. So please like, share, and subscribe via all your favorite podcast channels.
This podcast was brought to you by Underscore, the transformation capability specialists.